The mail lady always smiled at him. His 6-year-old daughter noticed it first, and what she did about it would change everything. The community hall in New Orleans' 7th Ward was packed. 200 postal workers and their families crammed into folding chairs, the air thick with the smell of bad coffee and institutional air conditioning. The kind of room where careers get celebrated and lives get quietly destroyed. The single father stood at the microphone, his brown skin gleaming under harsh fluorescent lights, his postal uniform wrinkled from a 12-hour shift that had ended with this: public humiliation, accusations he couldn't defend against, termination. His hands trembled, not from fear, from the effort it took not to break in front of his little girl. She stood beside him in her yellow dress, the one she'd insisted on wearing because it was fancy, and tonight was supposed to be special. Her small hand wrapped around his wrist like an anchor, like she was holding him up instead of the other way around. Across the room, a woman with kind eyes and her hand pressed to her mouth was crying. The mail clerk, the one who'd been smiling at him for months in a way that made his heart remember what hope felt like. Between them, the wreckage of a moment that shouldn't have been possible. His daughter had walked to that microphone minutes earlier, asked a question that made the entire room gasp. A question so brave, so achingly honest, that grown adults were weeping. She'd asked the mail lady to come to dinner, in front of everyone, while her father was being fired. What this room didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that this man's voice used to fill theaters. That before grief silenced him, before a hurricane took everything, before 19 hours on a rooftop with an infant taught him that survival and living were two different things. He had been extraordinary. Someone in the crowd was starting to remember, starting to recognize something in the way he stood, the way he breathed, the remnants of a presence that obscurity couldn't fully erase. A phone screen glowed, an old video, a name from another lifetime, and the man at the microphone was watching his past and his future collide in the eyes of a woman who just agreed to take a chance on him. Because his daughter was braver than both of them. If you believe that love is worth the risk of being seen, stay with this story, because what you're about to witness is what happens when a child refuses to let fear win, when grief finally makes room for grace, and when the people we think we're protecting end up being the ones who save us. Before we begin, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, have you ever had someone love you enough to push you toward happiness you were too afraid to reach for? But to understand how a 6-year-old's matchmaking turned into the most viral moment of courage the internet had seen in years, we need to go back 3 months, to the morning a widowed father delivered mail with a smile that never quite reached his eyes, and a little girl decided she was going to fix that. The mail lady always smiled at him, but right now, standing at a microphone in front of 200 people, the single father wasn't thinking about smiles. He was thinking about survival. The community hall in New Orleans' 7th Ward hummed with tension. Folding chairs scraping linoleum, whispered conversations crackling like static, fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across faces that had turned from celebration to spectacle in the span of 10 minutes. The man at the podium was black, tall, lean, his postal uniform seeming too small now, like armor that had failed him. His hands gripped the mic stand with the kind of stillness that suggested controlled panic. Beside him stood his 6-year-old daughter in a yellow dress, her small hand wrapped around his wrist. Across the room, a woman with kind eyes and her hand pressed to her mouth was crying. The mail clerk, the one who'd been smiling at him for months in a way that made his heart remember what hope felt like. Between them, the wreckage of a moment that shouldn't have been possible. His daughter had walked to that microphone minutes earlier, asked a question that made the entire room gasp. A question so brave, so achingly honest, that grown adults were weeping. She'd asked the mail lady to come to dinner, in front of everyone, while her father was being fired. What this room didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that this man's voice used to fill theaters. That before grief silenced him, before a hurricane took everything, before 19 hours on a rooftop with an infant, taught him that survival and living were two different things. He had been extraordinary. Someone in the crowd was starting to remember, starting to recognize something in the way he stood, the way he breathed, the remnants of a presence that obscurity couldn't fully erase. A phone screen glowed, an old video, a name from another lifetime. And the man at the microphone was watching his past and his future collide in the eyes of a woman who just agreed to take a chance on him because his daughter was braver than both of them. If you believe that love is worth the risk of being seen, stay with this story, because what you're about to witness is what happens when a child refuses to let fear win, when grief finally makes room for grace, and when the people we think we're protecting end up being the ones who save us. Before we begin, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, have you ever had someone love you enough to push you toward happiness you were too afraid to reach for? But to understand how a 6-year-old's matchmaking turned into the most viral moment of courage the internet had seen in years, we need to go back 3 months. To the morning a widowed father delivered mail with a smile that never quite reached his eyes, and a little girl decided she was going to fix that. 3 months earlier, the Central Business District post office smelled like cardboard and humidity and the faint ghost of chicory coffee from the break room. The sorting room lights flickered on at 5:45. The loading dock door rolled up at 6. Terence Broussard was always the first one there. He moved through the morning routine like a man who'd done it 1,000 times before. Scan the packages, sort by zone, stack the accountables in their locked tray, check the route sheet for updates. His hands worked without thought. His mind stayed quiet. That was the point. The back room was his, no windows, just metal shelves and canvas bins, and the steady hum of the sorting machine down the hall. He liked it that way. Invisible felt safe. At 6:15, the side door creaked open. Amelie came in carrying her backpack and a folded piece of paper she'd been drawing on at home. She was 6, all long limbs and bright eyes, her hair pulled back into 2 puffs with bright yellow ribbons. "Morning, baby," Terence said without looking up. "Morning, Daddy." She knew the routine. Backpack in the break room, homework on the table. Don't touch anything that looked official. She'd been coming with him on early days since she was 4, back when daycare drop-off didn't open until 7 and his shift started at 6. He heard her humming as she walked down the hall, some melody she'd picked up somewhere. She was always humming. At 6:30, the front counter lights came on. Nadine LaRue was early too. She always was. Terence could hear her moving around out there, unlocking the register drawer, booting up the computer, setting out the stamps and the forms people always asked for. He finished sorting the last tray, picked up the accountables, registered letters, packages that needed signatures, and carried them to the front. Nadine looked up when he came through the door. "Morning, Terence." "Morning." He set the tray on the counter between them. Their eyes met for half a second longer than necessary. She smiled. Not the customer service smile she gave everyone else. Something warmer, something that made the corners of her eyes crinkle. He smiled back before he could stop himself. Then he looked down at the tray and stepped back. "That's everything," he said quietly. "Thank you." He turned to go, paused, turned back. "You doing okay?" he asked. "I know Fridays get busy." Her smile deepened. "I'm good. You?" "Can't complain." He left before the silence could stretch too long. In the break room, Amelie was watching through the doorway. Her head tilted. Her eyes tracked him as he walked back to the sorting area. Then they tracked the front counter where Nadine was still smiling at nothing in particular. Amelie's lips pressed together, thoughtful. At 7:45, Terence loaded his mail cart and walked Amelie to school. It was on his route, 4 blocks down, right on the corner of Magazine and Josephine. She held his hand the whole way, even though she was getting too old for that. The morning was already warm. The air smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. "Daddy," Amelie said, "the mail lady always smiles at you." Terence's chest tightened. He kept walking. "Miss Nadine smiles at everybody, baby. That's her job." "No," Amelie said. "Not like that. She smiles at you different." He didn't answer. They reached the school. The crossing guard waved. Other kids streamed past them toward the front doors. Terence knelt down, adjusted the straps on Amelie's backpack. "You got your lunch?" "Yes, Daddy." "You got your homework?" "Yes, Daddy." He kissed her forehead. "I'll pick you up at 3. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she giggled, soft, knowing, like she'd just figured out a secret. "What?" he asked. "Nothing." She turned and ran toward the building, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Terence stood there watching until she disappeared through the doors. Then he went back to his cart and started his route. He didn't think about Nadine's smile, Didn't think about the way his daughter looked at him like she was planning something. Didn't think about the fact that he'd been alone for 6 years, and maybe, just maybe, he was tired of it. He thought about the mail, the addresses, the rhythm of walking, the safety of not being seen. But 3 blocks into his route, he caught himself humming. The same melody Amelie had been humming that morning. The same melody Celeste used to sing. Amelie started paying attention. Not the way kids usually watch things. Distracted, half-focused, moving on to the next thing before the first is done. She watched the way cats watch birds. Patient, still, waiting for the right moment. That afternoon when Terrence picked her up from school, she didn't chatter about her day like usual. She just held his hand and walked quietly beside him, her eyes scanning his face every few steps, like she was looking for something she'd missed before. The next morning she watched Nadine. The post office break room had 3 tables, a microwave that only worked half the time, and a coffee maker that gurgled like it was dying. Terrence sat at the far table eating the sandwich he'd packed. Toast and peanut butter. Same thing every day. Nadine came in during her break. She didn't look at Terrence right away, just walked to the coffee maker, poured a cup, added cream and sugar. Then she poured a second cup. Black, no sugar. She walked it over to his table without a word, set it down beside his sandwich. "Thought you might want some," she said softly. Terrence looked up. His expression shifted, surprise, then something warmer. "Thank you." Their eyes held for 2 seconds, maybe 3. Then Nadine smiled and walked back to her own table. Amelie watched from the doorway. She counted the seconds. She noticed the way her father's shoulders relaxed, the way Nadine looked back once before sitting down. She noticed everything. On Friday, Amelie came with Terrence to pick up a package at the front counter. Nadine was helping an older man figure out the customs form for a package to Haiti. She was patient with him, kind, explained it 3 times without frustration. When the man left, Terrence stepped up with his paperwork. "Busy day?" he asked. "Always," Nadine said, but she was smiling. "How's your route?" "Can't complain?" "You never do." There was a pause. Comfortable, like they'd had this same exchange 100 times and never got tired of it. "You doing okay?" Terrence asked. "Really?" Nadine's smile softened. "Yeah, I am." Amelie tugged on her father's sleeve. He looked down. "Can I have a penny?" she asked. He pulled one from his pocket, handed it to her without thinking. She walked to the little charity jar on the counter, the one for the children's hospital, and dropped it in. Then she turned and looked at Nadine. "My daddy's nice," Amelie said. Nadine laughed. "Yes, he is." "Are you nice too?" "Amelie," Terrence said quietly. A warning. But Nadine knelt down so she was eye level with the little girl. "I try to be," she said. Amelie studied her face. "You have pretty hair." "Thank you, baby." Amelie nodded, satisfied. Then she took her father's hand, and they left. Outside, Terrence looked down at his daughter. "What was that about?" "Nothing," Amelie said. Then she hummed a little tune and skipped ahead. Saturday morning, Amelie came with Terrence for his weekend shift. She liked Saturdays. The post office was quieter, fewer people. She could wander more freely. She found Nadine in the back filing room, organizing certified mail receipts. Another clerk, a woman named Denise, was helping her. Amelie stayed just outside the door, out of sight, listening. "You seeing anyone?" Denise asked. Nadine laughed. "Girl, no. Who has time?" "You got time. You just scared." There was a pause, papers rustling. "Maybe," Nadine said quietly. "It's been 3 years. I should be over it by now. Grief don't work on a schedule. I know, but I'm tired of being alone. So do something about it." Another pause, longer this time. "There's someone," Nadine said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "At work, but I don't know if he's got his own stuff, his own loss. I don't want to assume. Who is it?" "Doesn't matter, he's not ready." "How you know?" "I just do." Amelie's hands curled into small fists. She turned and walked back to the break room where her father was eating lunch. That night at home, Amelie asked the question that had been building in her chest all week. Their shotgun house in Tremé was small but clean. Narrow hallway connecting 3 rooms like train cars. The walls were covered with photos. most of them from before. Before the storm, before Mama died, before everything changed. Amelie sat on the couch next to her father while he folded laundry. The TV was on, but neither of them was watching. "Daddy," she said, "do you miss Mama?" Terrence's hand stilled. He looked down at the shirt he was holding. One of his work shirts, faded blue. "Every day," he said quietly. "Does it make you sad?" "Sometimes, but it's okay to be sad about people you love. Means they mattered." Amelie picked at a loose thread on the couch cushion. "Do you think Mama would want you to be alone forever?" Terrence set down the shirt. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw something in her face that made his chest tighten. "Why are you asking me that, baby?" "Just wondering." He didn't answer. Couldn't. The question sat between them like something alive. After Amelie went to bed, she couldn't sleep. She got up and tiptoed to the hallway closet where her father kept the old boxes, the ones he never opened, the ones that smelled like dust in memory. She found the box labeled videos and pulled it down carefully. Inside were DVDs in plastic cases, dates written on them in her father's handwriting. She took 3 and carried them to the living room. The first video was from 2003, a church gathering. Mama was singing. Her voice filled the room, warm and clear and full of joy. Daddy was sitting in the front row, watching her with eyes that said she was the only person in the world. The second video was from 2004, a performance. Daddy on stage with a microphone, speaking words that sounded like music. The crowd on their feet. Mom in the audience clapping so hard her hands must have hurt. The third video was from their wedding. They were dancing, laughing. Mama whispered something in Daddy's ear, and he threw his head back and smiled so wide it looked like his face might break. Amelie watched all 3 videos twice. Then she sat in the dark living room with the remote in her lap and thought about smiles. The way Mama smiled in the videos. The way Nadine smiled at Daddy. The way Daddy smiled back when he thought no one was looking. The next morning, she found the kitchen calendar hanging on the wall by the fridge. It was covered in her father's neat handwriting, route schedules, bill due dates, parent-teacher conference reminders. On the 3rd Friday of next month, someone had written, "Employee Recognition Ceremony, 7 p.m. Amelie pulled a red marker from the junk drawer. She circled the date 3 times. Then she wrote underneath it in big letters, "Important." She didn't know exactly what she was going to do yet, but she knew it had to be soon. Her father was good at being alone. He'd had 6 years of practice. If she waited much longer, he might get too good at it to stop. The community hall in the 7th Ward smelled like floor wax and old hymnals. Folding chairs covered in fabric sat in neat rows. A banner stretched across the front wall, celebrating excellence in service. Terrence sat in the 3rd row with Amelie beside him. She wore the yellow dress they'd bought for Easter last year. Still fit, but just barely. Her hair was pulled back with matching ribbons. She swung her feet under the chair, too short to reach the floor. Around them, postal workers and their families filled the space. Kids in dress clothes squirmed in their seats. Adults chatted quietly. The air conditioning rattled but didn't do much against the humid evening heat. Nadine sat 4 rows ahead with the other clerks. Her natural hair was twisted up in an elegant style. She wore a coral dress that made her brown skin glow under the fluorescent lights. Terrence had noticed when she walked in, looked away before she could catch him staring. At the head table sat the district managers, pressed suits, polished shoes, coffee cups in front of them like props they weren't actually drinking from. In the center sat Veronica Stanton, regional operations manager, mid-40s, sharp gray suit that probably cost more than Terrence made in 2 weeks. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful. Her eyes swept the room like she was counting inventory. The ceremony started at 7 on the dot. Awards first, 5-year pins, 10-year pins, safety recognitions. Each name called, polite applause, handshake at the podium, back to their seat. Amelie clapped for everyone, even people she didn't know. Terrence recognized some of them. Marcus from the mail truck garage, Sharon who worked the package window. Good people, quiet people who showed up and did their jobs and went home. People like him. At 7:45, Stanton took the podium for operational updates. Her voice carried across the room. Professional, measured. the kind of voice that made pronouncements sound like facts even when they weren't. As we celebrate excellence tonight, she said, we must also acknowledge areas where we fall short of the standards our customers deserve. The room shifted. People sat up straighter. This wasn't part of the usual script. Accountability is what separates good organizations from great ones. And accountability means addressing performance issues directly, transparently, and without favoritism. Amelie stopped swinging her feet. Stanton pulled out a folder, set it on the podium with deliberate care. Terence Broussard, she said, please stand. The room went quiet, not the comfortable quiet of a pause between speakers, the wrong kind of quiet. Terence stood slowly, his hands hung at his sides. His face showed nothing. Mr. Broussard has been with us for 9 years, Stanton continued. Unfortunately, recent performance reviews reveal a pattern of chronic issues that can no longer be overlooked. She lifted papers from the folder, held them up for the room to see. Late deliveries, customer complaints, failure to meet route completion benchmarks, a general lack of commitment to excellence that undermines everything we're trying to build here. Amelie's small hand gripped the armrest of her chair. Nadine turned in her seat. Her eyes found Terence. Her mouth opened slightly like she wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Stanton kept going. Each accusation delivered with the same flat professionalism. I have documented evidence of time cards showing irregular hours, routes left incomplete, multiple violations of protocol. She paused, let the silence build. Based on this evidence, I am recommending immediate termination pending a formal investigation. Effective tonight. Someone gasped. A woman 3 rows back. Terence stood there, tall and lean and completely still. His brown skin had gone ashen. His jaw was locked so tight the muscle jumped. He said nothing. Does anyone have any questions? Stanton asked. Her tone made it clear she didn't actually want questions. No one moved. 200 people in that room, and not one of them spoke. Nadine started to stand. The clerk beside her, an older woman named Doris, grabbed her wrist and pulled her back down, whispered something urgent. Nadine's eyes were wet. Her free hand pressed against her chest like she was trying to hold something in. Amelie watched her father. Watched the way his shoulders curved inward. Watched the way he stared at the floor instead of meeting anyone's eyes. Then she watched Nadine, saw the tears, saw the hand pressed to her chest, saw the way she looked at Daddy like his pain was her pain too. Amelie had spent 2 weeks watching, learning, understanding, and in that moment, everything she'd been planning crystallized into something clearer, something necessary. That lady at the podium was lying. Amelie knew it the way you know when someone's being mean on purpose, the way you know when something's not fair, even if you can't explain why. Daddy was good. Daddy was kind. Daddy helped people, and Miss Nadine loved him. Maybe she didn't know it yet. Maybe she was too scared to say it. But Amelie had seen it in the smiles, in the coffee she brought without asking, in the way her voice got softer when she said his name. Stanton was still talking. Something about maintaining standards, about difficult decisions, about the integrity of the institution. Her voice sounded like chalk on a blackboard. If there are no comments, Stanton said, we'll move on to... Amelie stood up. Her yellow dress rustled. Her ribbons bounced. She was 6 years old and barely tall enough to see over the chair in front of her. But everyone turned to look. Terence saw her standing. His eyes went wide. Amelie, he whispered, sit down, baby. She didn't sit down. She walked into the aisle. Her shoes clicked on the linoleum. Each step deliberate, purposeful. Stanton stopped mid-sentence. Excuse me, this is not... Amelie kept walking, past the rows of chairs, past the adults who were all staring now, past the managers at the head table who looked confused and annoyed in equal measure. She walked right up to the stage, climbed the 3 steps. Her hand gripped the railing. At the podium, she had to stand on her tiptoes to reach the microphone. She looked out at 200 faces, found her father's, found Nadine's. Then she looked directly at the woman in the sharp gray suit and spoke into the microphone with a voice that didn't shake at all. Miss Nadine, Amelie said into the microphone. Her voice was clear, steady. My daddy won't ask you himself, so I'm asking for him. The room went absolutely still. Will you come to dinner at our house? For 3 seconds, no one breathed. Then the room exploded. Gasps rippled through the chairs. Someone laughed, nervous, shocked. A woman in the back said, "Oh my God," loud enough to hear. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Nadine's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes went wide. She stared at the little girl on stage like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Terrence looked like he'd been struck by lightning. His face went from shock to horror to something close to agony in the space of a heartbeat. "Amelie, no," he whispered, but his voice didn't carry. The room was too loud now, too alive with whispers and confusion and disbelief. Amelie didn't stop. She stood on her tiptoes, gripping the podium like it was the only solid thing in the world. "He makes really good gumbo," she said. "And he smiles different when you're around, like how he smiled at Mama in the pictures." Nadine's other hand pressed to her chest. Tears welled in her eyes. Stanton stood frozen at the side of the stage. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked like someone had just ripped the script out of her hands. Amelie turned away from the podium, faced the room, 200 people staring at a 6-year-old girl in a yellow dress. "My daddy is the kindest person I know," she said. "He helps everybody." Her voice was getting stronger now, louder, not yelling, just clear, like she was telling a story she'd practiced 100 times. He remembered Miss April's grandson was coming home before Miss April did, because he saw the letters. He carried Mr. Washington's groceries up the stairs when Mr. Washington's hip was hurting. He knew Miss Chen needed her medicine, and he made sure she got it even when the pharmacy messed up. People in the audience were nodding. An older man in the 5th row, Mr. Washington himself, had tears running down his face. Amelie kept going. "And Miss Nadine knows it too, because she watches him be kind every single day, and she smiles at him the way Mama used to smile in the videos." Terrence's hands were shaking. He looked at his daughter, at Nadine, at the floor. Anywhere but at the 200 pairs of eyes that were now looking at him like they'd never really seen him before. Amelie turned, found Stanton, pointed directly at her. "So why is that lady being so mean to him?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Stanton's face went red, then white, then red again. "This is completely inappropriate," she snapped. "This child needs to sit down. This is a formal proceeding, not a—" But no one was listening to her anymore, because Nadine was standing up. She rose from her seat in the clerk's section slowly, deliberately. Her coral dress caught the fluorescent light. Her hands were trembling, but her face was set. She didn't say anything yet, just stood there, looking at Amelie, then at Terrence, then at Stanton. The room watched her, waited. Doris, the clerk who tried to pull her down earlier, reached for her arm again. Nadine pulled away gently, shook her head. She stepped into the aisle. Her heels clicked on the linoleum. Each step echoed in the silence. She walked past rows of postal workers who'd worked beside her for years, past managers who barely knew her name, past families who were trying to figure out what they were witnessing. She reached the front, climbed the 3 steps to the stage, stood beside Amelie. The little girl looked up at her, smiled, that luminous smile her mother used to have. Nadine put her hand on Amelie's shoulder, protective, grounding. Then she turned to face the room, to face Stanton, to face all of it. Her voice was soft when she spoke, but everyone heard it. "No," she said, just that one word, but it carried weight. Stanton blinked. "Excuse me?" "No," Nadine repeated. "What's inappropriate is you standing up here fabricating charges against the best man in this building." The room erupted again, louder this time. Shocked voices, chairs scraping. Someone said, "What?" Someone else said, "I knew it." Stanton's professional mask cracked. "You don't know what you're talking about. I have documentation. I have evidence." "You have lies," Nadine said, still soft, still steady. "And I can prove it." Nadine reached into her purse, pulled out a folder, the kind with a metal clasp and worn edges. She'd been carrying it for weeks. She set it on the podium, opened it. Inside were papers, printed emails, highlighted time cards, handwritten notes with dates and names. "For the past 6 weeks," Nadine said, "I've been documenting a pattern." Her voice was shaking, but it held. "You've been targeting long-term employees, Miss Stanton, manufacturing inefficiencies, Creating false paper trails to justify budget cuts and automation? Stanton's face went from red to white. You have no idea what you're... Marcus Jenkins, 22 years of service, forced out in February after you accused him of route violations. The routes you changed without telling him. The room was dead quiet now, everyone leaning forward. Sharon Baptiste, 18 years, gone in March. Late package deliveries you documented. Packages she never received because you redirected them. Nadine pulled 3 sheets from the folder, held them up. James Cooper, April, same pattern, same accusations, same manufactured evidence. She looked directly at Stanton. And now Terrence. A man in the back row, a mail truck driver, stood up. His voice was rough, angry. Sharon was my cousin. She didn't do nothing wrong. She didn't, Nadine said. None of them did. She handed the folder to a man sitting in the second row. Younger guy, had his phone out. The union rep. He took it, started flipping through pages. His eyebrows went up. Stanton stepped forward. Her professional mask was gone. This was raw now, desperate. This is insubordination, she snapped. You're making baseless accusations against a superior. I could have you terminated for this. Both of you. Legal action, defamation. You have no idea the trouble you just... Fire me too, then, Nadine said. Her voice was soft, steady as a heartbeat. But the Inspector General already has copies. The room erupted. Not gasps this time. Full voices. People talking over each other. Someone said, "Oh my God." Someone else said, "I knew it." Chairs scraped. People stood. The union rep was on his phone. Typing fast. His face had gone serious, professional. Terrence still stood in the middle aisle. His hands hung at his sides. He looked at Nadine like he was seeing her for the first time. Like he couldn't believe what she'd just done. For him. Amelie tugged on Nadine's dress, looked up at her with those bright eyes. "Are you in trouble?" she whispered. Nadine knelt down, eye level with the little girl. "No, baby, I'm okay." "You're really brave." Nadine's eyes filled. She touched Amelie's cheek. "So are you." At the back of the room, an older woman stood. She was maybe 70, wore a purple dress and a church hat. Her hands gripped the back of the chair in front of her. She was staring at Terrence. Not with confusion, with recognition. "I know you," she said. Her voice carried across the room like a bell. Everyone turned to look at her, then back at Terrence. "I know you," she said again. "You're Terrence Broussard." Terrence's breath caught. He looked at the woman. His face showed something close to fear. "You performed at my church in 2004, the woman continued, right before the storm. You sang at my daughter's wedding. Your voice..." She trailed off, her own voice breaking. "Your voice could make the angels weep." The room shifted again. Different energy now. Confusion giving way to curiosity. People looking at Terrence with new eyes, trying to reconcile the quiet mail carrier with whatever this woman was describing. A younger woman 3 rows up pulled out her phone, started typing. "Terrence Broussard, New Orleans," she muttered to herself. Her screen lit up. Search results loading. She clicked on a video, turned up the volume. A voice filled the room through her phone speaker. Deep, rich, powerful, speaking words that sounded like music, the cadence of a performance, the soul of a poet. She turned the phone to show the person next to her. An old video, grainy quality, a younger man on a stage, tall, lean, brown skin gleaming under stage lights, commanding a crowd with nothing but his voice. The person beside her gasped, looked at Terrence, back at the phone, back at Terrence. "That's you," they whispered. More phones came out, more searches, more videos loading. The whispers spread like fire. Silver-tongued Broussard. He was famous. What's he doing delivering mail? Stanton was still trying to regain control, still trying to make this about procedure and protocol and her authority, but no one was listening to her anymore. They were all watching Terrence, waiting for him to say something, to explain, to confirm or deny what the videos were showing them. And Terrence stood there in his worn postal uniform, with his daughter's yellow dress glowing like a beacon in his peripheral vision, and a woman who just risked everything to defend him, standing at the front of the room and his past bleeding out across 200 phone screens, and he didn't know whether to run or break, or finally, after 12 years of silence, speak. The video playing on the woman's phone was from 2002. The quality was grainy, shot on someone's camcorder from the back of a theater, but the sound was clear. A voice filled the community hall. Deep, rhythmic, powerful enough to make the air vibrate. The man on the screen was younger, maybe 26. His brown skin gleamed under stage lights. He wore all black. His movements were precise, controlled, every gesture deliberate. He wasn't reading, wasn't following a script. The words poured out of him like water, like breathing, poetry woven with jazz cadence and gospel truth, and something ancient that didn't have a name. The crowd in the video was on their feet, 1,000 people, maybe more, clapping on the beat, calling back when he paused, responding to him like a congregation responds to a preacher. The woman turned up the volume. Other phones joined in. Different videos, different years, same man, same impossible voice. Terrence at the Mahalia Jackson Theater. Stage so big he looked small on it, until he opened his mouth. Terrence at a cultural festival. Outside, afternoon sun behind him. Crowd packed so tight people stood on chairs to see. Terrence at a groundbreaking ceremony, dressed in a suit, smiling wide. A woman beside him, beautiful, glowing, her hand in his. Behind them a sign, Lower 9th Ward Cultural Center, opening fall 2005. The video froze on that image. The man and woman. The promise of something that never came. People passed phones to each other, watched, looked at the man on the screen, looked at the man in the aisle, back and forth, trying to match them, trying to understand. An older man near the back stood up, gray beard, work boots. He'd been quiet all night. "Silver-tongued Broussard," he said. His voice was rough, choked. "You were going to change everything." The room went absolutely still. Stanton's voice cut through the silence. Sharp, desperate. "This is irrelevant," she snapped. "This man's past employment or hobbies have nothing to do with his current performance issues. I don't care if he was—" "You should care," someone said. It was the union rep. He'd been scrolling through his phone while Nadine's folder sat open in his lap. Now he looked up. His face was serious. "This man built programs that are still running. His cultural initiatives brought millions in funding. He trained dozens of poets who are still performing. And you're trying to fire him for being late with the mail?" Stanton's jaw tightened. "I'm trying to maintain standards that—" "What happened?" A woman's voice interrupted. It came from the middle of the room. A postal clerk. Someone who'd worked with Terrence for years and never knew any of this. "What happened to you?" she asked again, looking right at him. Terrence stood in the aisle with Amelie's hand in his. His chest rose and fell. He looked at the phones, at the videos, at the man he used to be frozen on a dozen screens. His daughter squeezed his hand. 3 pulses. The way she did when she wanted him to know she was there. He looked down at her. She nodded, just once, like she was giving him permission. Terrence looked back at the room, at 200 faces waiting for an answer. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. Not the voice from the videos, not thunder, just tired truth. "August 2005, he said. "Hurricane Katrina." The room leaned in. "My wife Celeste was a music teacher. She was everything. Voice like an angel, smile that could light up a room. She was pregnant. We were—" His voice caught. He breathed, continued. "The storm hit on a Monday. Tuesday morning, the levees broke. Water came up fast. We got to the roof with our baby. Amelie was 6 months old. We had a blanket, a bottle, nothing else." Someone in the audience made a sound, small, hurt. "I held my wife with one arm and my daughter with the other for 19 hours. Celeste kept singing, kept telling me it would be okay. She sang until her voice gave out, until the sun came up and the water kept rising and the helicopters couldn't see us and—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "She slipped. I tried to hold on, but Amelie was crying, and I couldn't. I had to choose. I chose my daughter, and Celeste went under." The silence in that room was complete, total, the kind of silence that feels like prayer. They pulled us off that roof at noon on Wednesday. I don't remember the rescue, don't remember the shelter. I remember waking up in a hospital with Amelie in my arms and someone telling me my wife's body had been recovered. A woman in the third row was crying openly. The man beside her had his hand over his mouth. I couldn't perform after that, Terrence said. Couldn't write. Couldn't hear music without breaking. The cultural center I was building? Gone. Wiped off the map. Everything I was building. Everything I was. Gone. He looked around the room, at faces he'd seen every day for 9 years. People who thought they knew him. I took the first job I could find that was stable, steady, something I could do without thinking, without feeling. I needed routine for Amelie, needed normal, needed to be invisible. His eyes found Nadine. She was still standing on stage, tears streaming down her face. I've been invisible for 12 years, Terrence said. I thought that's what I deserved. Thought that's what safety looked like. Thought if I stayed quiet enough and small enough, nothing else could be taken from me. He looked at Stanton, really looked at her, saw what Amelie had seen, what Nadine had seen. A scared woman who built her power on other people's pain because she had nothing else to stand on. His voice was still quiet, but something had shifted in it, something old and deep and unbreakable. What are you so afraid of, he said, that you need to destroy people to feel powerful? Stanton's face went from white to red. Her hands trembled. The professional mask was gone. This was survival now. This is emotional manipulation, she snapped. Her voice was too loud, too sharp. You're creating a hostile work environment. Both of you. Legal action, defamation. I will escalate this to federal charges if necessary. You have no idea the union rep stood up. He held his phone high so everyone could see. I've been recording this entire exchange, he said. His voice was calm, final. And based on the documentation Ms. LaRue provided, I've already filed a formal complaint with the Inspector General's office. They opened an investigation 20 minutes ago. The room erupted again. More voices, more movement. People standing, turning to each other, processing what they just heard. A district manager at the head table stood quietly. An older man, gray suit. He walked over to Stanton, leaned in close, whispered something. Stanton pulled away from him. No, I'm not going anywhere. This is my... Miss Stanton, the manager said quietly. Please, step outside. I don't answer to you, she hissed, but her voice was cracking now. The corporate polish was gone. What was left was smaller, scared, desperate. She turned to face the room, addressed them like she was still in control. This man is unstable, she said, her voice rising with each word. He's unfit. He's using his tragic past to manipulate you into sympathy. This is exactly why we have standards, why we have procedures. People like him, people like me, Terrence said. His voice was so quiet she had to stop talking to hear him. Everyone turned, waited. Terrence looked at Stanton, then at the room, at 200 faces he'd passed in hallways for 9 years without really being seen. You want to know what silence costs? He said. I can tell you. It costs your voice, your joy, your future. It costs you so much that one day you wake up and realize you've been holding your breath for 12 years, waiting for permission to exhale. He paused, breathed. I chose silence because I thought it would keep me safe, keep Amelie safe. I thought if I stayed small enough and quiet enough, nothing else could be taken from me. His daughter's hand was still in his. She squeezed it. He squeezed back. But my daughter sees things I don't. She sees that silence doesn't protect you. It just makes you smaller. She sees that the people who care about you don't want you to be small. They want you to be whole. He turned to look at the room. Really look at faces he recognized now. People he'd helped. People who'd helped him without him even knowing. Marcus, he said, looking at the mail truck driver. You covered my route when Amelie had the flu. Didn't ask for credit, just did it. Marcus nodded. His eyes were wet. Sharon, Terrence continued, finding a clerk near the middle. You taught me the package system when I started. Stayed late 3 nights in a row until I got it right. Sharon wiped her eyes. Every person in this room has made this place work through decency, through kindness, through showing up and caring about the person next to you. That's not in any manual. That's not what standards measure. That's just humans being human to each other. The air conditioning hummed. Someone coughed. Otherwise, the room was completely silent. Terrence turned back to Stanton. "You asked what I'm afraid of," he said. "I'll tell you. I'm afraid of staying silent when I should speak. I'm afraid of letting fear make my daughter think that's how you survive. I'm afraid of becoming so small that the people who love me can't find me anymore." He took a step toward her. Just one. "What are you afraid of?" he asked. The question hung there. Simple. Devastating. Stanton's mouth opened. Closed. Her hands were shaking. She looked around the room for support. For someone to back her up. To validate her authority. No one moved. I'm not," she stammered. "You can't speak to me like that. I'm a regional manager. I have authority here. I have lawyers. I have—" "Nothing," Terrence said quietly. "You have nothing. Because everything you built was built on making other people feel small. And when that stops working, there's nothing left." He paused. "I don't need my voice back to see you." The silence that followed was absolute. Stanton stood there, alone, exposed. Everything she'd built collapsing around her in real time. A movement from the stage broke the stillness. Nadine was walking down the steps, past the rows of chairs, into the center aisle, toward Terrence. She moved with purpose, with certainty, like she'd made a decision and nothing was going to stop her now. She reached him, stood in front of him, her brown skin glowing under the fluorescent lights, her natural hair perfect, her eyes full of something Terrence hadn't let himself see before. She took his free hand, the one that wasn't holding Amelie's, held it in both of hers. "Your daughter is braver than both of us," she said. Her voice was soft, but everyone heard it. "And yes," she said, "I'll come to dinner." Amelie giggled. That bright, joyful sound that children make when something goes exactly the way they plan. The room erupted, not with gasps this time, with applause, with cheers, with the sound of 200 people witnessing something true and good and worth celebrating. People stood, clapped harder. Someone whooped. Someone else yelled, "Yes!" An older woman in the back was crying and clapping at the same time. Terrence looked at Nadine, at her hand in his, at the smile on her face that he'd been too afraid to hope for. Then he looked down at Amelie. She was beaming, proud, satisfied. She'd done exactly what she set out to do. And watching his daughter's face, seeing that luminous smile that was so much like her mother's, Terrence finally understood what he'd been too afraid to learn. Love didn't erase the past. It didn't replace what was lost. It just made room, made space for something new to grow alongside the memory of what came before. The applause kept going. People were standing now, moving toward them, reaching out to shake hands, to hug, to say something kind. But Terrence just stood there with his daughter's hand in one of his and Nadine's in the other, and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in 12 years. Hope. 30 minutes later, the ceremony had dissolved completely. The orderly rows of chairs were empty. People clustered in the lobby, the parking lot, anywhere they could talk without being overheard. The community hall's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Someone had propped open the front doors. Warm night air drifted in, carrying the smell of magnolia and distant rain. Terrence stood near the back wall with Nadine and Amelie. His daughter was leaning against Nadine now, eyes half closed. The adrenaline that had carried her through the evening was gone. What was left was a tired 6-year-old past her bedtime. The union rep approached. His phone was still in his hand. He looked serious but satisfied. "Formal investigations launched," he said. "Inspector General's office confirmed it 10 minutes ago. Stanton suspended pending review. Effective immediately." Terrence nodded. Didn't trust himself to speak yet. "Also," the rep continued, holding up his phone, "you're trending." Nadine blinked. "What?" "Someone recorded Amelie's speech, and the part where you took his hand. It's all over local social media. Katrina survivor poet finds love through daughter's courage. That's the headline they're running with." He showed them the screen, a video playing on loop. Amelie at the microphone. Nadine walking down the aisle. The moment their hands clasped, the room exploding in applause. The view count was climbing in real time. Thousands, Tens of thousands. There's a news crew outside, and the rep said. Local station. They want interviews. Terrence shook his head. No, not tonight. You sure? This could be good for... Not tonight, Terrence repeated, firmer this time. The rep nodded. I'll tell them. He walked away. Terrence looked down at Amelie. Her eyes were fully closed now. Nadine had her arm around the little girl's shoulders. She okay? He asked quietly. Just tired, Nadine said. It's been a long night. An older woman approached, Mrs. Patterson from the route. She'd been getting mail from Terrence for 8 years. I never knew, she said. Her eyes were red. All those times you helped me with my packages, carried them up my stairs when my knees were acting up. I never knew what you'd been through. You didn't need to know, Terrence said. But I should have seen you better, she said. Should have asked. Should have. You saw me fine, Terrence interrupted gently. You always said thank you. You always smiled. That was enough. She hugged him, quick and fierce. Then she was gone, wiping her eyes. More people came, one by one, saying things they should have said years ago, sharing stories about small kindnesses they'd never mentioned. Marcus, the mail truck driver, told everyone about the time Terrence covered his route when Marcus's mother was in the hospital. 3 days straight, never asked for credit. Sharon, the package clerk, talked about the training sessions, how patient Terrence was, how he never made her feel stupid for asking questions. Mr. Washington, the older man with the bad hip, stood up and told the story about his groceries. But he added something new, said Terrence had been doing it for 2 years, every Tuesday, carrying bags up 3 flights of stairs, never once complained. An older black woman in a purple church hat, the one who'd recognized him earlier, approached with purpose. That cultural center you were building, she said, in the 9th Ward. It never got rebuilt after the storm. No, ma'am, Terrence said. It didn't. It should be, she said. We need places like that, spaces for our young people to create, to learn, to be seen. A man beside her nodded. I'd donate to that, if someone organized it. Me too, someone else said. And me. The murmurs spread. People pulling out phones, talking about fundraisers, about grants, about making calls tomorrow to people who might help. Terrence just stood there, overwhelmed, watching something he'd thought was dead start to breathe again. Across the lobby, Stanton stood in the corner with the district manager and a man in an expensive suit who had to be her lawyer. She was talking fast, gesturing, trying to control a situation that had already slipped through her fingers. 2 security guards approached her, not aggressive, just present. One of them said something quiet, gestured toward the exit. Stanton's face went red again. This isn't over, she said, loud enough for half the lobby to hear. I have lawyers. I have documentation. This is defamation, harassment. I will pursue every legal avenue available to... So do we, the union rep called back. He was standing near the door, his phone still recording. So do we. The security guards escorted Stanton out. She went stiffly, chin up, back straight, maintaining composure even as everything crumbled. The door closed behind her. The lobby was quiet for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Slowly at first, then others joined. Not the explosive applause from before. Something steadier, more deliberate. The sound of people acknowledging that something important had just happened. Terrence looked at Nadine. She looked back, a question in her eyes. Let's go home, he said quietly. She nodded. They walked toward the exit. Terrence carried Amelie now. She was asleep on his shoulder, her yellow dress wrinkled, her ribbons askew. Nadine walked beside them, close enough that their arms brushed. The parking lot was warm. Street lights glowed orange. Somewhere distant, thunder rumbled. The news crew was waiting by the entrance. Camera, reporter with a microphone, the whole setup. The rep had warned them off, but they tried anyway. Mr. Broussard, can we ask you a few... Terrence walked past them. Didn't stop, but he did turn his head slightly. Thank you for coming, he said, but not tonight. Tonight's for my family. He said it so quietly the microphone probably didn't catch it, but the reporter heard. She nodded, stepped back. Let them pass. They reached Terrence's truck, an old Ford, primer on one door, a Saint sticker on the back window. He opened the rear door, settled Amelie into her car seat. She stirred slightly, mumbled something, went back to sleep. He closed the door carefully, turned to Nadine. She was watching him. The parking lot lights caught the twist of her hair, the curve of her cheek, the way she was smiling like she couldn't quite believe any of this was real. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Ask me tomorrow." She laughed, soft, warm. They stood there for a moment, not touching, just present. Two people at the beginning of something neither of them knew how to navigate yet. The passenger door of the truck opened. Amelie was awake again, leaning forward as far as her car seat would allow. "Daddy?" she said, her voice small and sleepy. "Yeah, baby." "Did I do good?" Terrence walked back to the door, knelt down so he was eye level with his daughter. He took her small hand in both of his. "You did everything," he said. She smiled, that luminous smile, the one that looked just like her mother's. "Can Miss Nadine ride with us?" she asked. Terrence looked at Nadine, raised his eyebrows, the question implicit. Nadine walked around to the passenger side, got in, buckled her seatbelt. "Yes," she said. "I can." Terrence climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine. The radio came on quietly. Jazz, the kind Celeste used to love. He pulled out of the parking lot, Nadine in the passenger seat, Amelie in the back, the three of them together for the first time. Not a family yet, but maybe the beginning of one. 6 months later, Terrence stood in an office that didn't feel like an office at all. The walls were covered with posters, local artists, poets, murals painted by kids from the neighborhood. His desk sat near a window that looked out onto the street. Sunlight poured in. The space smelled like fresh paint and possibility. His business card said, Community Cultural Liaison, a title that hadn't existed before the Postal Service created it for him. He paired postal facilities with arts programs, brought poets into post offices to perform during lunch breaks, organized mural projects where students painted delivery trucks, connected carriers with local schools for literacy programs. Small things, quiet things, but they were building something. Twice a week, he taught poetry workshops at Amelie's school. 20 kids in a circle on the library floor, teaching them that words had rhythm, that stories mattered, that their voices were worth hearing. His own voice was coming back, slowly, not the performance voice from before, something different, quieter, but still his. Veronica Stanton's investigation had concluded in February, terminated for cause. She'd resigned before formal charges could be filed. Quietly left New Orleans. No forwarding address, no goodbye, just gone. The viral video had done something unexpected. Within a week, donations started arriving. Small amounts mostly, $20, $50, but they added up. Someone started a fundraising campaign. Rebuild the Dream, the Celeste Broussard Cultural Center. By March, they had enough to break ground. The new building was rising in the 9th Ward. Different location, same vision. Opening planned for fall. They'd named it for Celeste. Terrence had stood at the groundbreaking ceremony with Amelie and Nadine and couldn't speak for 5 minutes. Just stood there with tears running down his face while his daughter held his hand and told him it was okay to cry. Nadine had been promoted to assistant postmaster after Stanton's removal. She ran the office with the same quiet competence she'd always had. Fair, firm, kind. People respected her, trusted her, the way they should have all along. She and Terrence were together, but they were taking it slow. Two people who'd both lost spouses knew not to rush, knew that grief didn't disappear just because you found someone new. They didn't live together yet. But Amelie had a drawer at Nadine's apartment, kept a toothbrush there, called it Miss Nadine's house, but was starting to say Nadine more often, the Miss dropping away gradually like training wheels. Today was August 28th, the anniversary of Celeste's death. 19 years since the storm. 12 since Terrence had stood at this grave and promised he'd take care of their daughter. The cemetery was quiet. Oak trees overhead filtered the afternoon sun into patterns of light and shadow. The air was thick, humid, the way New Orleans always felt in late summer. Terrence knelt at the grave, set down the flowers he'd brought, white lilies, Celeste's favorite. Nadine stood a few feet back, giving him space, but present, her hands clasped in front of her. head bowed slightly, lips moving in silent prayer. Amelie stood between them. She'd drawn a picture. Celeste singing, the way Amelie imagined her from all the videos, all the stories. A woman she'd never really known but carried in her heart anyway. She set the drawing against the headstone, weighted it down with a smooth stone so it wouldn't blow away. Terence looked at the grave, at the name carved in granite, Celeste Marie Broussard, beloved wife, cherished mother. Her voice still sings. "Hey, baby," he said quietly, "it's us again." He told her about the past 6 months, about the new job, about the cultural center being rebuilt, about Amelie singing in the church choir now, about how their daughter was brave in ways he'd never been. He told her about Nadine, about being scared at first, about feeling like moving forward meant leaving Celeste behind, about learning that wasn't true. "I thought I had to choose," he said, "thought loving someone new meant forgetting you. But Amelie showed me different. She showed me that love doesn't replace, it just makes more room." His voice cracked. He breathed, continued. "You'd like Nadine. She's kind, she's strong. She sees me, not who I was, not who I could have been, just who I am. And somehow, that's enough for her." Amelie knelt beside him, wrapped her small arm around his shoulders. "Mama would be happy," she said. Simple, direct, true. Terence pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. Nadine stepped forward, knelt on Terence's other side. She didn't touch the grave, didn't presume, just bowed her head. "Thank you," she said softly, "for raising a daughter who sees love everywhere, for teaching your husband that kindness matters, for being someone worth remembering." The three of them stayed there. Not long, just long enough. When they stood to go, Terence took one last look at the headstone, at the woman who'd given him everything, who'd taught him what love was, who'd left him with a daughter who refused to let him forget how to live. "I'm okay," he whispered. "We're okay." They drove home in Terence's truck, the same old Ford. Still had the primer on one door, but it ran fine. Got them where they needed to go. Home was the shotgun house in Tremé, but it looked different now. Nadine's plants on the porch, her books on the shelves, her coffee mug in the cabinet next to his. Small changes, but they made the space feel alive again. Terence made gumbo, the recipe Celeste had taught him 20 years ago. He moved around the kitchen with practiced ease, chopped vegetables, made the roux. Let it cook slow and patient. Nadine set the table, found the good plates, the ones they only used for special occasions. Amelie helped, folded napkins, put out the cornbread, hummed while she worked. They ate together, 3 people around a table built for 4. The empty chair didn't feel empty. It felt like space, like room for memory, for grace. Amelie watched her father and Nadine, the way they passed dishes without asking, the way they smiled at each other when they thought she wasn't looking, the way they moved around each other with careful tenderness, like people learning a new dance together. She smiled, that luminous smile her mother gave her. She knew. She'd always known. After dinner, they sat on the porch. The evening air was cooling. Cicadas sang. Somewhere down the street, someone was playing music. Jazz drifting through the neighborhood like a memory. Terence sat on the steps with Amelie. Nadine sat beside him, their shoulders touching, not holding hands yet, just present, together. "Daddy," Amelie said, "sing something." Terence looked at her. "What do you want to hear?" "The one Mama liked, the one about Grace." He hesitated. Then he opened his mouth. Let the words come, not performing, just sharing. His voice was different than it used to be, quieter, rougher around the edges. But it was his, and it was enough. Nadine closed her eyes, listened. Amelie leaned against her father's arm. When he finished, the street was quiet. The music from down the block had stopped. The cicadas had paused. Amelie looked up at him. "That was good, Daddy. Thank you, baby. Mama would have liked it." "Yeah," he said. "She would have." They sat there as the sky turned purple, as the street lights came on, as the neighborhood settled into evening. And Terence understood something he'd been too afraid to see before. His daughter had taught him that courage wasn't loud. It wasn't grand gestures or public declarations. It was a 6-year-old girl who saw love and refused to let fear win, Who knew that the people who love us most are brave enough to push us toward the happiness we're too afraid to reach for ourselves? Love doesn't erase the past. It doesn't replace what was lost. It sits beside it, makes room, honors what came before by daring to build what comes next. That's not betrayal. That's grace.